Happy New Year, everybody! Welcome back to Reading in the Dark. My name is Byron and I read sometimes, and I am psychic in this video because I know what you are thinking. That's right, this is Apple Juice. Happy New Year, it's 2023. 2022, big year. So much happened. I am so excited to start a new year, and I'm really excited to make this video. I haven't done one of these in a while. I'm doing a end of year wrap up, not talking about all the books I read, but talking about stats and numbers and plans and goals, thoughts and feelings and impressions about how everything went on this channel and with my reading. I'm so happy that you are here, and I'm excited for you to come along with me on this journey. So without any further ado, cheers, here's to 2022. You happened, you were a lot better than 2021. And we're excited to move on. Apple juice, cider. It's sparkling. See, it kind of looks. It could pass for no, it couldn't. I ran out of Prosecco, so this is what we have. It's apple juice. I'm always paranoid about setting my books on fire, which is probably fair. So it is January 1st. As I am filming this video, I had intended to make this video and post it on New Year's Eve, but because 2022 is just the year that won't quit, my boyfriend David and I are going on a vacation in just a few days. We're going to California and we're gonna be there for a week. And I have some video editing work that I have to finish up for a client. So I ended up not being able to film this. I spent a lot of time prepping this video to get the stats and everything ready. The stats, they are aplenty, so let's get started. In 2022, I read 31 books, and I think my Goodreads goal was 26 because I wanted to be able to say that I read a book every other week. So I succeeded that, 31 books this year. And that is comprised of 8,552 pages. I really wish that publishers would publish the word count of books because that's a lot more relevant, and I would love to actually find out how many words I read. But 8,552 pages, and that's an average of 281 pages a book, which seems fair because I read a lot of, relatively short cozy mysteries, a couple of novellas, and then some novels. Moving on to the ratings, this is the good part. So in 2022, I did pretty well. 7 5-star reads, 14 4-star reads, 8 3-star reads, 2 2-star reads, and luckily once again I had no 1-star reads, for an average rating of 3.84. So yeah, that was pretty good. I had 7 5-star reads and 14 4-star reads. That's not a shock. I give 4 stars a lot. I kind of need to get better at rating books and being more honest. I feel like what happens is I rate a book 5 or 4 stars, and then later I go, well, maybe I was just excited to give it a nice rating, so then I downgrade it because it really wasn't quite as good as I said it was. I know that happened with Baby Teeth. I gave it 5 stars because the ending just really nailed it for me. But then as I was thinking about it later, I was like, well, that's a 4-star book. That didn't change my life. I honestly think everybody rates books higher than they really mean to. It seems like 3 stars is considered a bad review on Goodreads, and I think that's silly. That should be middle of the road. It's impulsive, the whole giving a rating to a book right after you finish it, especially on Kindle, because the thing pops up and it's like, you finished the book, what's the rating? And you're like, I don't know. So I need to get better at maybe just not rating it right away and giving myself some time to think about it. In terms of the genres that I read this year, I read 13 cozy mysteries, not a surprise, 6 thrillers, 4 horror novels, 3 sci-fi or fantasy, 3 literary fiction novels, and 1 historical and 1 classic, and that was A Scarlet Letter. I'm not surprised by this. Also, there's obviously crossover between thriller and horror and whatnot. Those are the genres that I read, and I'm not surprised by that. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. I'm happy with the mysteries and the thriller and the horror being up there. I'd like to read a little bit more horror. I went through a period of time where I sort of didn't understand what horror was. Tonally, I think I don't know what I expected it to be, but I've started to kind of key in a little bit better on what to expect when I read horror, and I've learned that I really like it. So I'd like to read more horror, and I'd like to read more historical for sure, because I know I like historical fiction, and I read only 1, maybe 2 books in 2022 that count. Sometimes when you live in Florida, the weather suddenly gives you a crazy cold snap, and you have below freezing temperatures the week of Christmas. and your body is thrown into turmoil because it's not used to those temperatures or the dryness that accompanied them. So I had all of this phlegm the last like week or so, and it's like almost all gone, but every once in a while I have a little coughing fit. And I find when I have a coughing fit, drinking pretend champagne helps. Of the 31 books I read in 2022, I wanted to break down what format I read them in. So, unsurprisingly, most of them were ebooks. 13 of them were ebooks that I read on my Kindle. Or you could say 15, because 2 of the books that I read on hardcover, I also sort of flipped back and forth and also read them on ebook. So it was 13 ebooks and 13 physical or paper books and 5 audiobooks. I sort of filled out these stats like with a very left-brained approach and like didn't think about it. But that's actually surprising to me. That's actually really interesting that it's evenly split, 13 and 13. Huh. Oh, you know why? Do you know why? It's because of Murder, She Wrote. I love reading these Murder, She Wrote novels in their paperbacks because it's, I don't know, it feels homier and cozier. They're just like easily digestible little dime store paperbacks. What's a dime store? Does anybody know? We don't have those anymore. So yeah, 13, 13, and 5. And the 5 is also interesting because I read a lot more audiobooks this year than I have in the past, and I almost finished a 6th. I finally realized that I drive a half an hour or 45 minutes to work every day, and then like a half an hour or 45 minutes home from work every day. I should make use of that time. So I finally started listening to audiobooks a couple months ago. Honestly, it's been a really, really good move. I've broadened my horizons a little bit, and I've mostly just been listening to Agatha Christie audiobooks, and I had a really, really good time. It makes the drive easier, and it's been helping my reading, so that's going to continue. Now, of these books that I read, let's talk about oldest, newest, shortest, and longest. The oldest book I read was The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which was published on March 16th, 1850. The fact that they still know the actual date in March of 1850 is amazing to me. I wonder if that's actually accurate. The newest book I read was Listen to Me by Tess Gerritsen, which was published on July 5th of 2022. The shortest book I read was also the last book I read, and it was a novella called Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I got it on NetGalley like a year ago, and I got it when it wasn't Christmas time, and I should have known better because I'm such a mood reader. I knew I was never going to read it. I finally read it, and it is a holiday book. It was really fascinating, and it reminded me of A Christmas Carol because it had sort of like a moral, holding up a mirror and like asking people to do better kind of thing. So the shortest book I read was Small Things Like These at 70 pages. But that was a novella. It was not actually a novel. So to be fair, the shortest actual novel I read was Women Talking by Miriam Taves, and that came in at 216 pages. Also loved that book. The longest book I read, well, first of all, was not very long. This is so sad. I really wish that I could just lie to you. Consumed by J.R. Ward, which I pretty much hated. I gave it 2 stars. It was 409 pages. I'm frustrated because the close second to that is The Exorcist. Now, I listened to the audiobook of that. I didn't read it on paper, but the paper version of that book is 403 pages, and that book I loved. Alas, Consumed by J.R. Ward was the longest book I read, which is so not long, so that's interesting. This year was all about me taking it easy and just wanting to get reading done. If that meant reading easy stuff, cozy mysteries, audiobooks or whatnot, fine, as long as it was keeping me reading. So I guess that sort of makes sense. Now, in terms of the best and worst reading months I had, in terms of like how many books I read, we were in rehearsal for our show at that place I work for 3 months. That's a very long time to rehearse a show. And it was like full time. We were working 5 and 6 days a week. So we were exhausted all the time, and I had no mental space for anything else. So that is a big part of the reason why there was very little reading going on. Not none, but very little, and none of this channel thing was happening during that time. So it all kind of started back up in August. I'll get to that later. So towards the end of that process is when my reading got a little bit better, and that was right before I started posting videos again. The best month I had for reading in terms of the number of books I read was July. In July, I read 5 novels, which amounted to 1,474 pages. And the best reading month I had in terms of ratings was actually December, which is kind of nice. With an average of 4.67 out of 5. That was the best. And that's it. I constructed that sentence strangely. The close second was September with an average of 4.5. Now, in terms of the worst reading month I had, just in terms of how much reading I did or did not get done, that would be May. In the month of May, I read one novel, 271 pages. I don't remember which one it was. And then the worst month in terms of ratings was also May. Because that one book I read, I gave 2 stars. I wonder... Oh yeah, that was Strangers We Know by L. Marr. Yeah, that book just did not work for me. I gave it 2 stars. So now it's time to talk about hauling, acquiring, the amassing of books. In 2022, I acquired 62 books. 62. 29 of them were ebooks. 7 of them were audiobooks. 13 of them were hardcovers. 13 of them were paperbacks. Of the paper books, the hardcovers and the paperbacks, 20 of those were new books, and 6 of them were used books. So that essentially means that 23% of the books that I bought on paper were new or used. And I need to do better. I'd love to make it 50% in the future. In 2022, I spent $474.16 on books. The average that I spent per book, $8.04. The amount of money, therefore, this is my favorite calculation of the year. This is where I shame myself and scare you into calculating the same thing. The amount of money that I spent in 2022 on books that I read was $206.20. The amount of money I spent on books that I did not read was $267.96. So, as per usual, I spent more money on books I didn't read than on books I did. Now, obviously I'm going to read those books, I just haven't read them yet, but that sort of makes me always feel like, okay, so I could have not spent $267, almost $268 on books this last year and had the exact same reading experiences that I had. Food for thought. Interesting. So my money goal for 2023, same as always, spend less. Stop buying books. That's basically the thing. Read the books you already own, Byron. And then I just wrote down, sigh. Now, in this last section, I want to talk about this channel, how things went on this channel in 2022. Spoiler alert, it wasn't great. Videos posted, 8. Posted 8 videos. How often? Well, as I said before, I was pretty much indisposed the first half of the year because of work. I was reading all year, but like not very much, and then it got a little bit better in like May, June, and then in July, which was a really good reading month. And I started posting again the next month in August. So how often did I post videos? I posted 1 video in August, 3 videos in September, 1 video in October, and then once again, 3 videos in November. So I kind of went back and forth from like being super productive video content wise to not doing that. And then in December, I just didn't post at all because I was working 2 jobs and I was really, really tired and I could barely function and the house became a mess and I had no time to clean it. And that is, I'm just doing my best. So that's what happened there. Was my posting schedule regular? No, it was not. Channel goals. Well, I need to post regularly again. 24 to 30 videos, that would be nice. I would love to post 2 a month though, because what I really would like to do, and I've said this before, this used to be the plan, didn't quite work out, and I think that's because the pandemic happened, is to post a wrap up at the beginning of the month, and then post a vlog halfway through the month of the previous month. So that's what I'd like to do, and we'll see. Yeah, and I also, something else that I thought of as I was sort of like looking through the videos, the 8 videos that I did post, is that I need or would like to focus a little bit more on reading. Vlogs are really fun, but they're time consuming and they do tend to focus less on books. So I would like to continue trying to crack the code on how exactly to make vlogs work for this channel and be sustainable, but I also do think it makes sense to return to form a little bit in terms of hauls and wrap-ups. Maybe TBRs, those can be fun to do. I mean, those videos are really easy to make, and I think that's what people enjoy on BookTube. I think BookTube is changing a lot, And this is maybe not even really a booktube channel anymore. It's really just a YouTube channel where I focus on books, but that's not the only thing I'm doing. But I would like to kind of get back to some of those staples. I think they're fun and easy to make. And if it's easy to make, then I can be motivated to make them. I was looking at the big picture in terms of trends in my reading this year, and there were two that I noticed very, very, very strongly. One was audiobooks. I read, I think it said 5 audiobooks this year, or listened to 5 audiobooks this year, and I normally just kind of don't do audiobooks for some reason. I don't know if some part of me, like my pride was like, that's not reading, and that's why I didn't do it. I think it partially was that I listened to music in the car during my commute, and I listened to podcasts, and I finally said, some of these podcasts are annoying me. Why don't I just listen to books instead? So that's a really good trend that I would like to see continue. I also tilted extremely towards mystery, thriller, and horror this year. I think I was sort of toying with the idea of like reading in the dark. Darkness. Here we are together reading dark things. But I think I have a lot to learn still about horror, so I'd like to read more of that. So actually both of the trends in my reading this year are trends that I would like to see continue. So that's a good thing. What I've learned about my reading. Mood reading is key, and I think it is probably my best mode of operation. Mood reading it's so much easier for me to decide to pick up a book and be excited to open it and start reading it and stay up late and enjoy myself if I just read whatever pops into my head at that moment. If I have a TBR or if I have a plan, then I kind of feel like I have a homework assignment and it's not as fun. If I can finish a book and say, oh my gosh, what am I going to read next? And like the world is my oyster, I get more excited to read. So I think I'm a mood reader. Also, something I learned for sure is that I really do still prefer reading on my Kindle. The only books that I consistently read on paper are the Murder, She Wrote books, and as I said, that's for sort of romantic reasons. I just think they're cute. But generally, when I owned a book on hardcover and on my Kindle, I would find myself gravitating towards the Kindle copy because I just find it easier to read on there. I love being able to look things up, highlight things. That was always true of my reading in the past. It was true of my reading the very first year that I had this channel, and I've gone back and forth, and I still like to collect beautiful paper copies of books that I like adore and want to lend out to people and look at on the shelf and love and admire and think about and remember. But for the most part, the actual reading, I prefer to do on my Kindle. It's crazy that we're going into 2023. 2023 to me sounds like a fictional future in some movie, but it's actually the year that we are currently living in, so that's weird. So these are the big goals. My big goals for my reading in 2023. Let's take a drink. I'm just having apple cider. I'll have those berries later, don't you worry. So my big goals for my reading in 2023. Of the paper books I bought this year, 23% of them were used, and so I just want to up that to 50%. If I buy a book on paper, I'm going to try to make it used at least half of the time. Now, that's not going to be the case when it's one of my favorite authors that I'm pre-ordering their book to support them. That's going to be a new book, obviously. Ebooks have to be new, but I would like to buy more used books. And then in terms of new books, I don't want to buy new books if I can help it, unless it's a favorite author, in which case I have to read it right away. And then after I read the brand new book, I immediately have to follow that immediately with some other book that's been sitting in my TBR for a long time. I'm going to continue the Murder, She Wrote media tie-in novel readathon marathon. There's over 50 books in this never-ending Murder, She Wrote book series. It is so charming. I love it. It brings me so much joy. So many of these books are 3 stars in a good way. Like, an easily readable, cozy, like, charming, like, comforting, hanging out with everybody's favorite grandma, Angela Lansbury, may she rest in peace. I'm not going to stop reading them. I'm going to read all of them. I'm just going to continue reading them, for the most part in order, unless one of them is very, very seasonal. And I'm also going to continue reading Stephen King. And that'll go a long way towards helping me realize my goal to read more horror. Yeah, I want to read more horror in 2023, and I also want to read more historical. Horror-storical. I'm going to read a lot of horror-storical novels. I started out my channel talking about how much I loved historical fiction, and I do. And anytime I read any other book in any other genre that happens to be historical, I love it that much more. In fact, it usually bumps a book up if it's like a 4-star read to being a 5-star read, or a 3-star read to being a 4-star read. Just happened with Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I really loved it. It was very holiday, it had a message, and it was also historical, so it was a 5-star read. So I will continue reading all of the Murder, She Wrote books. I will continue reading Stephen King novels in the order that they were published. I want to read more horror. and I want to read more historical novels. And yeah, the last big goal is to read 52 books in 2023. 100 books in a year I don't think will ever be feasible for me. I set that goal once in the year that I read 58 books, thinking, oh, I can handle it. I might have been able to handle it. But the year that I set that goal was just not the year for that. I really think 52 is the sweet spot for me. It's challenging, but also plausible. So that is it. That will do it for this video. This is the conclusion of my 2022 year in review wrap-up video, 2023 goals video, whatever. That's the longest title ever. YouTube will hate that. There's nothing in this glass. Cheers to you, my friends, my subscribers, and everybody for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for your comments and your likes and your engagement. I appreciate you all. I'm looking forward to continuing this journey with you in 2023. And until next time, I will be right here in the dark reading. Bye.